The ocean breathes ancient secrets. As moonlight dances across restless waves, it illuminates fragments of a mystery that has captivated humanity for millennia. A civilization lost to time, swallowed by the merciless sea in a single day and night of misfortune. Atlantis. The very name evokes images of marble temples, advanced technology, and wisdom beyond our ancestors' capabilities. A paradise lost, perhaps the greatest civilization ever to exist, or the most elaborate myth ever conceived. Tonight we journey together through the mists of time. We'll examine evidence spanning archaeology, geology, mythology, and ancient texts to answer a question that has haunted scholars for generations. Was Atlantis real? And if it was, what does its existence and destruction mean for our understanding of human civilization? What warnings might it hold for our own society? What forgotten knowledge might still lie waiting beneath fathoms of silence? The story begins with Plato, the renowned Greek philosopher. In two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BCE, he introduces Atlantis with remarkable specificity. Not as fiction, but as historical fact passed down through generations. According to Plato, approximately 9,000 years before his time, placing Atlantis roughly 11,400 years ago, there existed an island nation of extraordinary achievement. Advanced, powerful, virtuous initially, but eventually corrupted by its own success. In a single day and night of misfortune, Plato writes, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. A civilization vanished so completely that only its name and story remained. Or so it seemed. For centuries, scholars dismissed Atlantis as mere allegory, Plato's literary device to illustrate political ideals. But recent discoveries across multiple scientific disciplines have raised startling possibilities. What if the story contains more truth than fiction? Imagine standing at the edge of a vast technological civilization 11,400 years ago. A society with navigation capabilities, advanced architecture, systematic agriculture, and perhaps technologies lost to subsequent generations. A world we've been taught couldn't possibly have existed. Our conventional understanding of human development places us firmly in the Neolithic period 10,000 years ago. Hunter-gatherers transitioning to early farming. Simple tools, no written language, no complex societies. Yet something doesn't add up. Megalithic structures around the world display engineering precision that should have been impossible for primitive peoples. Underwater ruins suggest coastal civilizations predating our timeline. Ancient maps show geographical knowledge supposedly unavailable to early cultures. Could Atlantis represent not just a single lost island, but a missing chapter in human history? A chapter that rewrites everything we thought we knew about our ancestors' capabilities. A chapter erased by catastrophic climate change at the end of the last ice age. The implications are profound. If advanced civilizations existed and collapsed before recorded history, we aren't the first to reach technological sophistication. We wouldn't be pioneers, but rather the latest iteration in a cycle of rise and fall. Tonight we'll examine the geological evidence for catastrophic flooding around 12,000 years ago. We'll explore archaeological anomalies that don't fit conventional historical narratives. We'll analyze ancient texts from disparate cultures that share striking similarities. We'll also address the skeptics' strongest arguments, the lack of definitive archaeological evidence, the problems with Plato's timeline, the human tendency to seek patterns and meaning where none may exist. This isn't a search for the supernatural or mystical. Instead, we're examining a rational possibility that human civilization is older and more cyclical than we've believed. That climate catastrophe may have repeatedly reset our technological progress. By the way, do you believe advanced civilizations could have existed before our recorded history? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious if you lean towards skepticism or if you sense there's more to our past. As we continue, keep an open mind, but maintain critical thinking. The evidence we'll present is fascinating, controversial, and in some cases, compelling. But ultimately, You must decide where the balance of probability lies. Was Atlantis a real place? Did it represent an actual advanced civilization that flourished and perished before recorded history? Or is it merely humanity's oldest and most persistent myth, a cautionary tale of hubris and destruction? Let's begin our journey by examining Plato's account in detail, not as myth but as potential history. Let's consider the world as it existed 12,000 years ago, when Earth emerged from the last great ice age into a period of dramatic climate transformation. Chapter 2. The Paradox of Advanced Antiquity. The conventional timeline of human civilization is both clear and comforting. We evolved gradually, developed simple tools, discovered agriculture around 10,000 BCE, formed villages, then cities, and eventually built the complex societies we inhabit today. A steady upward trajectory. But this narrative has cracks, anomalies that don't fit neatly into our understanding of what our ancestors should have been capable of. Massive stone structures of perfect mathematical precision, ancient maps showing Antarctica without ice, cultural memories of global floods. If Atlantis existed as described, a maritime power with advanced knowledge of architecture, astronomy, navigation, and possibly metallurgy, it would fundamentally transform our understanding of human potential. It would mean civilization isn't a recent achievement, but a recurring cycle. Why does this matter? Because our identity as a species is built upon our understanding of our past. If we've risen and fallen before, everything changes. Our uniqueness, our trajectory, our future. Consider the timeline. Plato places Atlantis approximately 11,400 years ago, coinciding precisely with the end of the Younger Dryas period. This was Earth's last major climate shift, when global temperatures rose dramatically, melting ice sheets and raising sea levels worldwide. Geological evidence confirms that coastlines looked dramatically different then. Vast areas of habitable land now lie under hundreds of feet of water. If advanced coastal civilizations existed, their remains would be submerged, explaining their absence from the archaeological record. This isn't mere speculation. Marine archaeologists have discovered numerous underwater structures around the globe, from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean, from Cuba to Japan. Some appear to be natural formations, but others defy conventional explanation. The most compelling sites include the underwater ruins off Yonaguni in Japan, structures off the coast of India in the Gulf of Cambay, and geometric patterns off Cuba that some researchers claim are submerged cities. All potentially date to the time frame Plato described. If these are indeed ancient structures, built when these areas were above water, they would date to approximately 10,000, 12,000 years ago, precisely when Atlantis purportedly flourished and fell. Precisely when conventional history says humans were still primitive hunter-gatherers. The stakes of this historical paradox are immense. If advanced civilizations existed in remote antiquity, why did they vanish so completely? What catastrophe could erase not just a city or culture, but nearly all evidence of their existence? More importantly, could it happen again? Are we, with all our technological achievements, equally vulnerable to catastrophic climate change or geological disasters? Is civilization more fragile than we imagine? Plato's account describes Atlantis as ultimately destroyed by natural disasters, earthquakes and floods. Modern geology confirms that the end of the last ice age saw precisely these phenomena on a massive scale. Rising sea levels, crustal rebound, and extreme climate instability. If Atlantis was real, its destruction wasn't supernatural punishment, but the result of natural planetary processes. Processes that remain active today. Processes that modern civilization might be accelerating through climate change. This raises uncomfortable questions about cyclical collapse. If advanced civilizations have risen and fallen before, are we merely the latest iteration? Will future archaeologists 10,000 years hence debate whether our civilization actually existed? The implications extend beyond archaeology into the realm of human potential. If our ancestors achieved remarkable feats of engineering, astronomy, and navigation without modern tools, We may be underestimating human capabilities. We may have forgotten more than we've learned. Imagine the knowledge that might have been lost. Architectural techniques that didn't require massive machinery. Astronomical understanding developed through centuries of naked eye observation. Navigation methods that didn't rely on GPS or even compasses. The central paradox that Atlantis presents is simple yet profound. Either we must accept that primitive humans were capable of extraordinary achievements beyond what we've credited them with, or we must consider that advanced civilizations existed earlier than we've recognized. Neither option fits comfortably within conventional historical frameworks. Both require us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human development. Both suggest our species' journey has not been the straightforward progression we've been taught. If Atlantis existed as Plato described, an island nation with concentric rings of land and water, advanced architecture and naval capabilities, it represents a missing chapter in human development. A chapter that might explain many historical anomalies. Consider the common elements in flood myths worldwide. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, from India to indigenous America, cultures separated by vast distances share strikingly similar stories. Global floods. Divine punishment. Few survivors. Civilization reborn. These aren't just myths, but potentially encoded memories. Cultural trauma passed through generations, describing real events that reshaped human society approximately 12,000 years ago. Events consistent with what geology tells us occurred at the end of the Younger Dryas period. The stakes of our investigation extend beyond academic curiosity. If advanced civilizations have faced climate catastrophe before, their experience might contain crucial warnings for our own society as we face climate change, rising seas, and environmental degradation. What if Atlantis isn't just a lost civilization, but a lost warning? A cautionary tale about environmental balance, sustainable development, and the fragility of even the most sophisticated societies when faced with natural forces beyond their control. This possibility transforms Atlantis from mere historical curiosity to urgent message, a time capsule of experience from ancestors who faced challenges disturbingly similar to our own. A message we can only receive if we first acknowledge their existence. As we continue our journey, keep this question in mind. If Atlantis existed, what else might conventional history have missed? What other chapters of human achievement might lie hidden beneath ocean waves or desert sands? How might our future change if we recover this lost past? Chapter 3. World at the End of Ice. To understand the possibility of Atlantis, we must first understand the world as it existed 12,000 years ago. This was no static prehistoric landscape, but a planet in dramatic transition. Earth was emerging from the grip of the last great ice age, a transformation as profound as any in human experience. Massive ice sheets that had covered much of North America and Europe for tens of thousands of years were retreating rapidly. Sea levels were rising, sometimes in catastrophic pulses as ice dams collapsed and vast glacial lakes drained into oceans. Coastlines were disappearing by miles. The world's geography was dramatically different. The Persian Gulf was a fertile valley with a river running through it. The Black Sea was a freshwater lake, significantly smaller than today. The English Channel was a vast plain connecting Britain to Europe. Perhaps most significantly for our investigation, sea levels were approximately 400 feet lower than present day. Vast continental shelves, millions of square miles of flat, habitable land, extended from our present coastlines. Prime real estate for developing civilizations. This was the world Plato described when he placed Atlantis in front of the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. A world with different shorelines, different islands, and potentially different civilizations than our archaeological record preserves. The climate was unstable, experiencing wild swings unlike anything in recorded history. The period known as the Younger Dryas saw temperatures plummet, then rise again dramatically within decades, climate change at rates that would devastate agricultural societies. Recent research suggests this period coincided with extraordinary cosmic events, Evidence of meteor impacts or airbursts appears in geological strata from approximately 12,800 years ago. These may have triggered massive wildfires, climate disruption, and flooding across continents. Such catastrophic events would have profound effects on any existing human societies. Coastal settlements would vanish beneath rising seas. Agricultural systems would collapse under rapid climate change. Knowledge would be lost as survival took precedence over cultural preservation. Yet humans were far from passive victims in this dynamic world. The archaeological record shows our ancestors were remarkably adaptable, innovative, and resilient. They navigated Pacific islands, tracked astronomical cycles, and developed sophisticated cultural systems. The transition from the Paleolithic to Neolithic wasn't simply about new tools, but new relationships with the environment. Humans began manipulating landscapes, selecting plant species, and creating permanent settlements, foundations for what would become civilization. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey offers a stunning example of what humans were capable of during this period. Dating to approximately 11,600 years ago, precisely when Plato places Atlantis, it features massive stone pillars with intricate carvings of animals and abstract symbols. Conventional archaeology struggles to explain how supposedly primitive hunter-gatherers could organize the labor and expertise to create such monumental architecture. The site predates pottery, metallurgy, writing, and the wheel, yet showcases sophisticated engineering and astronomical knowledge. What if Göbekli Tepe isn't an anomaly, but evidence of capabilities that were once more widespread? What if it represents knowledge preserved from an earlier, more developed culture? Perhaps one displaced by rising seas and climate change. Similar questions emerge when we examine other ancient sites. From Gunung Padang in Indonesia to the underwater structures of Yonaguni. From the perfect astronomical alignments of ancient monuments to the mathematical precision of their construction, capabilities seem to precede technologies. This period also marked the emergence of agriculture in multiple locations, seemingly independently. The Fertile Crescent, China, Mesoamerica, and the Andes all developed agriculture within a few thousand years, a blink in evolutionary time. Coincidence or preserved knowledge? The conventional explanation is parallel development, similar solutions to similar challenges. But another possibility exists, that agriculture wasn't independently invented multiple times, but remembered, preserved by survivors of earlier agricultural societies disrupted by climate change. This brings us back to Plato's account. He describes Atlantis as an agricultural society with irrigation systems, domesticated animals, and cultivated crops, precisely the package of technologies that suddenly appeared worldwide after the Younger Dryas period ended. Plato also describes Atlantis as a maritime power with navigation capabilities. We know humans had watercraft at least 50,000 years ago, evidenced by the settlement of Australia. By 12,000 years ago, they could have developed sophisticated vessels and navigation techniques. Recent discoveries continue to push back the dates of human maritime capabilities. Evidence from Greek islands suggests human presence requiring boat transport as early as 130,000 years ago. Pacific islands show settlement patterns requiring intentional navigation, not mere drift. If humans could cross open water to settle distant islands before recorded history, they could certainly develop the maritime trade networks that Plato attributes to Atlantis. They could map coastlines, establish trading colonies, and create the foundations for a seafaring civilization. This maritime capability would explain another puzzling feature of ancient history, the appearance of similar cultural elements across vast distances. Pyramid construction techniques, solar and stellar calendars, flood myths with striking similarities. These parallels have led some researchers to propose diffusion theories, the spread of cultural elements through contact rather than independent invention. If advanced maritime civilizations existed before the end of the last ice age, such diffusion becomes not just possible but likely. And if these civilizations primarily occupied coastlines, the most logical location for maritime cultures, their remains would now lie hundreds of feet underwater, explaining their absence from conventional archaeology. The evidence of their existence would be submerged, buried, or recycled. This is where Atlantis transforms from myth to hypothesis, not as Plato described it in every detail, perhaps, but as representative of maritime civilizations that may have flourished when sea levels were lower, only to be obliterated by the rising waters at the end of the Ice Age. The world 12,000 years ago was poised between ice and warmth, between hunter-gatherer existence and agricultural civilization. It was a world of rapid change, environmental stress, and human adaptation. Precisely the conditions where innovation flourishes or perishes. Chapter 4. Shadows Beneath the Waves. The search for Atlantis begins where land meets sea, or more precisely, where land once met sea before rising waters transformed ancient coastlines. If advanced maritime civilizations existed during the last ice age, their remains now lie beneath hundreds of feet of water. Marine archaeology has traditionally focused on relatively recent shipwrecks and submerged ports from classical antiquity. But a new frontier is emerging, the systematic exploration of continental shelves that were dry land during the last ice age, potential homes to forgotten cultures. What evidence might survive after 12,000 years underwater? Stone structures would endure, though covered in marine growth and sediment. Geometric patterns that couldn't occur naturally. Right angles, circular formations, and straight lines that suggest human creation. One of the most intriguing underwater discoveries lies off the coast of Japan near Yonaguni Island. Here, massive stone structures with terraces, platforms, and right angles rest in shallow waters. Some researchers believe they represent a temple complex from a prehistoric civilization. Critics argue these structures are natural formations, the result of particular geological processes creating geometric patterns. But even skeptical geologists acknowledge the unusual nature of the formations, and some features, like straight channels and curved steps, are difficult to explain naturally. Whether natural or artificial, the structures were above water until approximately 10,000 years ago, precisely when Plato places the destruction of Atlantis. If artificial, they would represent a coastal civilization with monumental architecture predating conventional historical timelines. Similar underwater formations have been discovered worldwide. Off the coast of India in the Gulf of Cambay, researchers have identified geometric structures covering vast areas that were submerged when sea levels rose after the last ice age. Perhaps most compelling are the underwater discoveries near Cuba. In 2001, researchers using sonar to survey the ocean floor identified what appeared to be urban complexes, geometric arrangements suggesting streets, buildings, and pyramids beneath 2,000 feet of water. The depth of these structures presents a puzzle. The end of the last ice age raised sea levels by approximately 400 feet, not enough to submerge structures to 2,000 feet. This suggests either geological subsidence or occupation during an even earlier period of lower sea levels. These underwater anomalies remain controversial in mainstream archaeology. Limited exploration, natural explanations, and the difficulty of conducting research in marine environments have prevented definitive conclusions. But they offer tantalizing possibilities for prehistorical civilizations. Beyond physical structures, evidence for advanced ancient maritime capabilities comes from unexpected sources. Ancient maps showing geographical knowledge supposedly unavailable to early civilizations, including the controversial Piri Reis map showing Antarctica without ice. The Piri Reis map, compiled in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, incorporates elements from older source maps, including startlingly accurate depictions of South American and Antarctic coastlines. Some features show coastlines as they would have appeared thousands of years ago. Skeptics argue these are coincidences or misinterpretations, but similar anomalies appear in other ancient maps, including the Orontius Phineus map of 1532, which shows Antarctica with rivers and mountains, features now buried beneath miles of ice. If these maps preserve genuinely ancient geographical knowledge, they suggest maritime capabilities, far beyond what conventional history attributes to ancient civilizations. They suggest the existence of seafaring peoples who mapped coastlines that are now either underwater or ice-covered. Plato's description of Atlantis as a maritime power with knowledge of distant lands suddenly seems less fantastical in this context. Perhaps his account preserves memories of actual advanced seafaring civilizations that mapped the world before catastrophic climate change erased their achievements. Supporting this possibility is the curious distribution of megalithic architecture worldwide. From Easter Island to Egypt, from Peru to Cambodia, similar construction techniques appear in cultures supposedly isolated from one another. Massive, precisely cut stones fitted without mortar. Conventional archaeology attributes these similarities to parallel development, similar solutions arising independently in response to similar challenges. But another possibility exists: diffusion of knowledge through maritime contact, facilitated by now-forgotten seafaring civilizations. The smoking gun for lost advanced civilizations may lie not underwater but in plain sight, in structures like the Great Pyramid of Giza, built with such precision that modern engineers struggle to explain how it was accomplished using technologies supposedly available 4,500 years ago. The Great Pyramid incorporates sophisticated mathematical knowledge, including pi and the golden ratio. It aligns to true north with accuracy only achievable through advanced astronomical observation. It consists of millions of multi-ton stones cut and placed with millimeter precision. Could the pyramids represent not the beginning of advanced architecture, but its re-emergence? Could they preserve techniques and knowledge inherited from earlier civilizations? Perhaps maritime cultures displaced by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. This would explain the seemingly sudden appearance of monumental architecture in Egypt without clear evolutionary precursors. It would explain the incorporation of advanced mathematical and astronomical knowledge in cultures supposedly just emerging from prehistory. Similarly, the sudden appearance of sophisticated writing systems, calendar systems, and astronomical knowledge in multiple locations worldwide suggests the preservation and transmission of earlier achievements rather than multiple independent inventions. It suggests inherited wisdom. The most compelling evidence for Atlantis-like civilizations may come from geology rather than archaeology. Recent research has identified multiple catastrophic flooding events at the end of the last ice age, precisely when Plato places the destruction of Atlantis. Meltwater pulse 1a, occurring approximately 14,000 years ago, raised global sea levels by 16 to 25 meters, 82 feet, over just 500 years. Meltwater pulse 1b, approximately 11,300 years ago, caused another rapid rise. Coastal civilizations would have faced relentless accelerating inundation. These weren't gradual changes allowing for orderly relocation, but catastrophic pulses triggered by collapsing ice dams and draining glacial lakes. Entire regions could be submerged within generations or even single lifetimes, creating precisely the single day and night disaster Plato described. Further evidence comes from studies of climate instability during the Younger Dryas period, 12,900 to 11,700 years ago. This period saw wild temperature swings, with cooling and warming events occurring within decades, rather than the millennia typical of natural climate cycles. Recent research points to cosmic impacts as potential triggers for these climate disruptions. Evidence of meteorite fragments, unusual minerals, and widespread wildfires appears in geological layers from approximately 12,800 years ago, potentially triggering the Younger Dryas cooling. Such an impact event, perhaps a fragmented comet striking Earth's ice sheets, could explain many elements of Atlantis legends. Earthquakes, floods, fire from the sky, rapid climate change devastating agriculture, coastal civilizations vanishing beneath rising waters. The evidence creates a compelling possibility. What if Plato's account preserves, through layers of retelling and embellishment, memories of actual maritime civilizations destroyed by catastrophic climate events at the end of the last ice age? What if Atlantis represents not fiction but forgotten history? If this hypothesis is correct, we would expect to find surviving cultural memories of these catastrophes in the mythologies of cultures worldwide. And indeed, we find precisely that. Flood myths, sharing remarkable similarities across cultures with no known contact. From Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh to Mesoamerican legends, from Greek myths to indigenous American stories, cultures worldwide preserve accounts of devastating floods that destroyed previous worlds. Not merely local flooding, but global cataclysms that reshaped civilization. These myths typically include similar elements: divine punishment for human wrongdoing, warnings given to virtuous individuals, survival of select knowledge keepers, and the rebirth of civilization from these survivors. Encoded memories of actual historical trauma passed through generations. But if advanced maritime civilizations existed before recorded history, why is physical evidence so sparse? The answer may lie in three factors: submergence beneath rising seas, recycling of materials by subsequent cultures, and the perishable nature of most technologies. Stone structures might survive underwater, but would be covered by marine growth and sediment. Wooden ships would decay, metals would corrode or be recycled. Written records on perishable materials would disintegrate. Only stone monuments might endure recognizably. This creates a detection bias in our archaeological record. Inland sites on stable terrain preserve evidence that coastal sites on now submerged continental shelves cannot. Our understanding of prehistory may be skewed toward cultures that occupied environments conducive to preservation. As we pause here, consider what lies ahead in our investigation. We've examined geological evidence for catastrophic climate events that coincide with Plato's timeline. We've identified underwater anomalies that could represent submerged structures from prehistory. We've noted the sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in multiple fields: architecture, astronomy, agriculture, mathematics, without clear evolutionary precursors. We've recognized the global distribution of flood myths that may encode memories of actual historical trauma. But the most startling evidence still awaits us. Recent archaeological discoveries that push human capabilities back far earlier than previously thought. Genetic studies revealing population collapses coinciding with climate catastrophes. Ancient texts describing technologies that shouldn't have existed. And perhaps most significantly, the emerging pattern that suggests cycles of civilization rather than linear progression. The possibility that we are not the first to achieve technological sophistication, but merely the latest iteration in a recurring pattern of rise and fall. What if the story of Atlantis isn't myth but memory? What if our ancestors weren't primitive but pioneers? What if the foundations of our civilization rest not on humanity's first achievements, but on the recovered fragments of earlier collapsed societies? These questions lead us to the most profound implications of all. If advanced civilizations have risen and fallen before, what lessons might their collapse hold for our own society as we face accelerating climate change? What warnings echo from our forgotten past? Chapter 5. History's Inconvenient Anomalies. As we venture deeper into our investigation of Atlantis, we must confront a troubling reality about our understanding of the ancient past. Conventional historical narratives rely on continuous, linear progression. But the archaeological record is filled with anomalies that challenge this comfortable certainty. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. This ancient Greek device contains dozens of precisely engineered bronze gears that track celestial movements with astonishing accuracy. It represents technological sophistication that shouldn't have existed for another 1,500 years. How did the Greeks create such a device without obvious technological precursors? Where did this knowledge come from? And why did it seemingly disappear, only to be reinvented millennia later? These questions suggest knowledge transmission rather than linear development. Similar anomalies appear throughout the ancient world. The Baghdad battery, clay jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods that may have produced electrical current. Ancient Indian texts describing flying machines with suspicious technical detail. Precision-cut stones that modern tools struggle to replicate. These anomalies aren't merely curiosities, but potential evidence of technological cycles rather than linear progress. They suggest knowledge appearing, disappearing, and reappearing throughout human history, precisely what we would expect if advanced civilizations rose and fell in prehistory. Perhaps the most compelling contradiction to conventional timelines comes from Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. This monumental complex features massive carved stone pillars arranged in precise circles. Archaeological dating places its construction approximately 11,600 years ago. According to conventional history, humans at this time were primitive hunter-gatherers without writing, metal tools, or even pottery. Yet they somehow quarried, carved, and transported stone blocks weighing up to 20 tons. They created sophisticated artwork and aligned structures to astronomical events. The site's excavator, Klaus Schmidt, concluded that first came the temple, then the city. This inverts our understanding of civilization's development, suggesting complex religious organization preceded settled agriculture, contradicting decades of archaeological theory. Similar contradictions emerge at other ancient sites. From the massive foundation stones of Baalbek in Lebanon to the precision-cut polygonal masonry of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, construction techniques that seem impossible with tools supposedly available at the time. These sites don't merely push back technological capabilities by centuries, but potentially millennia. They suggest engineering knowledge that appears fully developed, without clear evolutionary stages, as if inherited from earlier unrecognized civilizations. The anomalies extend beyond architecture into the realm of ancient knowledge systems. The accuracy of ancient astronomical alignments, from Stonehenge to the pyramids to temples across Mesoamerica, suggests observational data collected over centuries or millennia. How did supposedly primitive societies develop such precise astronomical knowledge without writing or instruments? The conventional explanation, that they developed it independently through naked-eye observation, requires implausible timeframes for cultures just emerging from hunter-gatherer existence. An alternative explanation is knowledge preservation. Astronomical observations collected by earlier, more advanced societies and preserved through catastrophic climate change at the end of the Ice Age. This would explain the seemingly sudden appearance of sophisticated calendrical systems worldwide. Similar questions emerge when we examine ancient mathematical knowledge. The Pythagorean theorem appears in Babylonian tablets centuries before Pythagoras. The concept of zero developed independently in multiple locations. Complex geometrical principles appear in diverse architectural traditions. These mathematical concepts don't represent intuitive discoveries, but sophisticated abstractions requiring generations of intellectual development. Their widespread distribution suggests either multiple independent inventions, statistically unlikely, or diffusion from common sources. Perhaps the most significant anomalies involve ancient maps showing geographical knowledge that shouldn't have been available to their creators. The Piri Reis map, compiled in 1513, depicts the Antarctic coastline beneath the ice, a feature unknown until modern radar mapping. The map's creator claimed to have based it on earlier source maps, including some dating to the time of Alexander the Great and earlier. If accurate, this suggests ancient maritime capabilities far beyond what conventional history attributes to early civilizations. Similar anomalies appear in the Orontius Phineus map of 1532, which shows Antarctica with rivers and mountains, features now buried beneath miles of ice. Geological evidence indicates Antarctica's coastline hasn't been ice-free for at least 6,000 years, possibly much longer. These maps present a profound contradiction to conventional historical timelines. Either they represent incredible coincidences and misinterpretations, or they preserve genuinely ancient geographical knowledge that could only have been obtained by advanced maritime civilizations predating recorded history. Such contradictions extend into genetic and linguistic evidence as well. Studies of human population genetics reveal unexplained bottlenecks and migrations coinciding with the end of the last ice age. Linguistic analysis suggests language families diverging far earlier than conventional models allow. Perhaps the most troubling anomaly is the universal presence of flood myths in cultures worldwide. From Mesopotamian accounts to Norse mythology, From indigenous American stories to Polynesian legends, cultures separated by vast distances share remarkably similar catastrophe narratives. Conventional explanations attribute these to local flooding events or universal human psychology. But another possibility exists, that these myths encode memories of actual global catastrophes associated with rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. If these flood myths preserve cultural memories of coastlines vanishing beneath rising waters 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, they would represent the longest continuous oral histories ever documented. Yet recent studies of indigenous Australian storytelling confirm multi-millennial preservation of geographical knowledge. Aboriginal stories accurately describe coastal features submerged 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. Polynesian navigation techniques preserved star positions orally for thousands of years. The longevity of oral tradition has been consistently underestimated by Western archaeological approaches. This raises a profound possibility. What if Plato's account of Atlantis represents not his invention, but the preservation of actual events through oral tradition? What if his myth is among the oldest continuous historical accounts ever recorded? I'm genuinely curious. Have you encountered any archaeological discoveries that made you question the conventional timeline of human civilization? Share your thoughts below. Sometimes the most interesting perspectives come from outside traditional academic frameworks. All these anomalies and contradictions point toward a troubling conclusion. Our understanding of human prehistory may be fundamentally incomplete. The linear narrative of steady progress from primitive to advanced may be not merely oversimplified but fundamentally incorrect. An alternative model emerges, one of cyclical development, where civilizations rise, flourish, and collapse repeatedly throughout human existence, where knowledge is gained, lost, and rediscovered, where climate catastrophes repeatedly reset human technological and social development. This cyclical model resolves many archaeological anomalies. It explains the appearance of advanced knowledge without clear developmental stages. It accounts for similar technologies appearing in supposedly isolated cultures. It aligns with geological evidence of recurring climate catastrophes. Most importantly, it creates space for Atlantis, not necessarily exactly as Plato described it, but as representative of maritime civilizations that may have flourished during the last ice age, only to be obliterated by rising seas and climate instability. As we continue, we'll examine how myths and legends worldwide might preserve memories of these lost civilizations. We'll explore out-of-place artifacts that challenge conventional timelines, and we'll consider what the cyclical rise and fall of advanced societies might mean for our own civilization. To Chapter 6, Legends Written in Stone and Memory. Myths and legends have traditionally been dismissed by archaeologists as pure fiction or symbolic narratives. Yet recent discoveries have repeatedly demonstrated that many ancient myths contain kernels of historical truth. From Heinrich Schliemann's discovery of Troy to the verification of biblical cities, legends often lead to real places. What if humanity's oldest and most widespread legends, those of advanced ancient civilizations destroyed by floods, contain similar historical cores? What if these aren't mere cautionary tales, but encoded memories of real catastrophes that befell real societies? The flood myth appears in virtually every ancient culture. Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh describes a global deluge sent by angry gods. Hindu texts recount Manu's survival of world-engulfing waters. Greek mythology tells of Deucalion and Pyrrha repopulating the earth after Zeus floods the world. Indigenous American traditions from the Hopi to the Maya describe previous worlds destroyed by water. Australian Aboriginal stories recount rising seas that created islands and drowned coastal lands. Chinese legends tell of Gun and Yu controlling catastrophic floods that threatened civilization. The conventional explanation attributes these similarities to coincidence or universal human experience with localized flooding. But this fails to explain their remarkable structural similarities across cultures that had no known contact. It fails to explain their consistent apocalyptic scale, A more compelling explanation emerges when we examine geological evidence. The end of the last ice age saw sea levels rise approximately 400 feet worldwide. This wasn't gradual but occurred in dramatic pulses as ice dams collapsed and glacial lakes drained into oceans. For coastal civilizations, these would manifest exactly as described in flood myths, waters rapidly overwhelming settled lands, forcing migration to higher ground, destroying established societies within generations or even single lifetimes. Global events experienced locally worldwide. Supporting this interpretation, many flood myths specify that the waters came from the sea, not just rainfall. They describe permanent inundation, not temporary flooding. They often reference the creation of islands where continuous land once existed, precisely what rising sea levels would create. The most compelling evidence connecting flood myths to actual historical events comes from indigenous Australian stories that accurately describe coastal features submerged 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. Features that have been confirmed by modern underwater archaeological surveys. These stories weren't recognized as containing historical geographic information until submarine archaeology verified their accuracy. They demonstrate that oral traditions can preserve precise knowledge across hundreds of generations, far longer than previously thought possible. If Australian stories accurately preserve memories of coastlines submerged 10,000 years ago, other cultures' flood myths might similarly preserve memories of maritime civilizations destroyed by rising seas at the end of the last ice age, including potentially Atlantis. Beyond flood myths, many cultures preserve legends of advanced ancient civilizations with sophisticated technologies. From Vedic accounts of Vimanas, flying machines, to Central American legends of previous technological societies, these stories contain surprising technical details. The Sanskrit Samarangana Sutradhara contains passages describing what appear to be flying machines. Inside, one must place the Mercury engine with its iron heating apparatus beneath. By means of the power latent in the Mercury, a man sitting inside may travel a great distance in the sky. Similar descriptions appear in the ancient Indian epics Mahabharata and Ramayana, with technical details about metallurgy and propulsion that seem incongruous with their supposed historical context. These texts describe devastating weapons with effects reminiscent of modern munitions. Conventional interpretations dismiss these as pure fantasy or poetic metaphor. But another possibility exists, that they preserve fragmented memories of technologies that once existed but were lost during civilizational collapse associated with climate catastrophe. This pattern repeats with ancient Egyptian texts describing boats of the sky and Sumerian accounts of the Anunnaki with technologies beyond their time. Chinese legends recount flying dragon chariots with detailed mechanical descriptions. Commonalities exist across supposedly isolated cultures. These literary anomalies align with physical evidence, out-of-place artifacts that suggest technologies existing thousands of years before their supposed invention. Objects that don't fit conventional historical timelines, but would make sense if advanced civilizations existed in remote prehistory. Among the most puzzling are the thousands of carved stone discs found in caves near Bayankara Ula in China. Dating potentially to 10,000 BCE, they feature microscopic spiral grooves containing what some researchers interpret as encoded information. Their purpose and creation remain unexplained. Similarly perplexing are the Baghdad batteries, clay jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods that, when filled with an acidic liquid, produce electric current. Dating to approximately 250 BCE, they predate the formal discovery of electricity by over 2,000 years. Perhaps most relevant to our investigation of Atlantis are underwater discoveries that suggest structures from periods when sea levels were lower. Beyond those mentioned previously, underwater sites have been identified off Malta, Spain, Israel, and throughout the Mediterranean. The submerged city of Pavlopetri off southern Greece dates to at least 3000 BCE and contains intact buildings, streets, and tombs. Heracleion in Egypt's Abu Kirbe remained unknown, except in legend until its discovery in 2000. Despite being a major port city in ancient times, these confirmed underwater cities demonstrate how completely maritime civilizations can vanish from historical record when submerged. They were major centers of trade and culture, yet became mythical or forgotten until modern underwater archaeology rediscovered them. If relatively recent cities like Heracleion could disappear so completely, how much more thoroughly would cities from 10,000, 12,000 years ago vanish? How many ancient harbors, trading posts, and maritime centers might lie undiscovered on continental shelves worldwide? The underwater evidence extends beyond structures to landscapes. Off the coast of Japan, India, and the Mediterranean, divers have identified what appear to be ancient agricultural terraces and irrigation systems now submerged beneath tens or hundreds of feet of water. These would have been above water during the last ice age, when sea levels were lower. Their presence suggests agricultural societies existing thousands of years earlier than conventional timelines allow, exactly as would be expected if Atlantis-like civilizations existed. Perhaps the most controversial underwater discovery is the pattern of apparently geometric structures identified by sonar off the coast of Cuba in 2001. Located at depths of over 2,000 feet, these formations show what appear to be pyramids, roads, and buildings arranged in urban patterns. The extreme depth presents a puzzle, as sea levels were never 2,000 feet lower during human existence. This suggests either geological subsidence or structures built on land that subsequently collapsed into deeper waters, potentially evidence of the catastrophic events Plato described. Beyond submerged evidence, out-of-place technologies appear in surviving ancient structures. The Great Pyramid's construction involves multi-ton stones cut with such precision that modern tools struggle to replicate the results. Its internal measurements encode mathematical constants not supposedly discovered until thousands of years later. Similar precision appears in structures worldwide, from the interlocking polygonal stones of Cusco to the massive platforms of Baalbek. These demonstrate engineering capabilities supposedly unavailable to their builders, yet the evidence literally stands in stone. The conventional explanation attributes these achievements to vast human labor using primitive tools over extended time frames. But practical experiments suggest this would be virtually impossible. Modern attempts to replicate these construction techniques using period-appropriate methods have largely failed. An alternative explanation is the preservation of advanced construction knowledge from earlier civilizations, techniques and technologies that survived the collapse of maritime societies at the end of the last ice age. Knowledge preserved by survivors who migrated inland as coastal regions flooded. This would explain the seemingly abrupt appearance of monumental architecture without clear evolutionary stages. It would explain the mathematical and astronomical knowledge encoded in structures built by cultures, supposedly just emerging from prehistoric conditions. It would also explain the striking similarities in construction techniques across supposedly isolated cultures, from megalithic Europe to South America to Easter Island. Not parallel development, but diffusion from common sources, perhaps maritime civilizations that connected distant regions before rising seas, fragmented humanity. The mythology surrounding megalithic sites often includes stories of ancient builder gods who possessed advanced knowledge. From Egypt's Thoth to the Andean Viracocha to Polynesian Tagaloa, cultures worldwide attribute their foundational knowledge to enlightened beings from previous ages. Conventional interpretation sees these as mythical constructs, but they might alternatively represent cultural memories of actual knowledge bearers, survivors from more advanced societies who appeared as gods to less developed cultures following civilizational collapse. This pattern, advanced knowledge appearing fully formed, attributed to divine or semi-divine sources, repeats across cultures emerging from prehistory. It suggests not divine intervention, but knowledge transfer from surviving representatives of earlier, more developed societies. When we examine the world's oldest myths and legends through this lens, they transform from primitive superstitions to potential historical documents. They become encoded memories of real events, real catastrophes, and real lost knowledge, preserved across millennia through oral tradition. And if these legends contain historical truths about lost civilizations, advanced knowledge, and global catastrophes, might Plato's account of Atlantis similarly preserve memories of an actual maritime civilization destroyed by geological upheaval at the end of the last ice age? Chapter 7. When Civilizations Collapse. As our investigation deepens, we must confront the profound implications of cyclical civilizational collapse. If advanced societies have risen and fallen repeatedly throughout human existence, our understanding of history and our vision of the future requires fundamental reconsideration. The stakes extend beyond academic curiosity into the realm of existential risk. If previous advanced civilizations collapsed due to environmental changes similar to those we face today, their experience contains warnings we ignore at our peril. Plato's account of Atlantis describes not merely a city swallowed by the sea, but an entire way of life obliterated. A maritime civilization with advanced knowledge, complex social structures, and extensive trade networks vanished so completely that only legends remained. The geological record confirms that the end of the last ice age saw precisely the kind of catastrophic events that could destroy coastal civilizations. Meltwater pulses raised sea levels dozens of feet within centuries. Climate oscillations disrupted agricultural systems. Coastal plains became shallow seas. Recent research suggests these changes may have been even more dramatic than previously understood. Evidence of cosmic impacts approximately 12,800 years ago indicates potential trigger events that could have accelerated ice melt, caused tsunamis, and triggered climate instability. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that fragments of a comet struck Earth's ice sheets at the end of the last ice age. This would have released massive amounts of meltwater, triggered wildfires across continents, and initiated rapid climate oscillations. Such an event would manifest exactly as described in world mythology: fire from the sky, followed by catastrophic flooding. It would create precisely the conditions for sudden civilizational collapse that Plato attributes to Atlantis. The impact hypothesis remains controversial in mainstream geology, but evidence continues to accumulate. Platinum anomalies in geological strata, nanodiamonds formed under impact conditions, and widespread charcoal deposits indicating continental-scale wildfires approximately 12,800 years ago. If confirmed, this would represent the most recent large-scale cosmic impact affecting human civilization. It would coincide precisely with Plato's timeline for Atlantis. It would provide a mechanism for the single day and night of misfortune he describes. The implications extend beyond Atlantis itself. If advanced maritime civilizations existed at the end of the last ice age, their collapse would fragment humanity into isolated communities. Knowledge would be lost. Technologies would disappear. Development would reset. This pattern, fragmentation, isolation, knowledge loss, appears in post-collapse societies throughout recorded history. From the Bronze Age collapse to the fall of Rome, complex societies disintegrate into smaller, less connected units. Technological regression follows. After Rome's fall, techniques for making concrete were lost for nearly a millennium. Astronomical knowledge declined. Infrastructure deteriorated. Population centers shrank. Even relatively recent collapses demonstrate how quickly advanced capabilities can disappear. The stakes of this investigation rise dramatically when we recognize the parallels between past civilizational collapses and current global trends. Climate instability, environmental degradation, resource depletion. The same factors that may have ended previous advanced societies. If Atlantis existed and fell due to environmental catastrophe, whether natural or partially self-inflicted, its experience contains urgent warnings for our own civilization as we face accelerating climate change. We may be repeating patterns that have ended advanced societies before. The most disturbing possibility is that collapse is not the exception, but the rule. That advanced civilizations typically outgrow their resource base, alter their environment beyond sustainable limits, and collapse before achieving the technological means to prevent their own destruction. This would explain why we don't see evidence of continuous technological development throughout human existence, why we don't find the remains of industrial civilizations in geological strata from millions of years ago, why technological progress appears episodic rather than continuous. It might also explain the Fermi paradox, the apparent contradiction between the high probability of extraterrestrial civilizations and our failure to detect them. Perhaps technological civilizations typically collapse before achieving long-term sustainability or interstellar capabilities. This raises the stakes of our investigation from historical curiosity to existential concern. If Atlantis represents not just a lost civilization, but a recurring pattern of development and collapse, we face a choice point similar to what previous advanced societies may have confronted. Recent climate modeling suggests we are pushing Earth systems toward tipping points that could trigger rapid, irreversible changes. Melting ice sheets, ocean current disruption, ecosystem collapse. The very conditions that may have ended Atlantis and similar maritime civilizations. The greatest value of investigating Atlantis may not be establishing its literal existence, but understanding the cyclical nature of civilizational rise and fall. Learning from past collapse cycles to prevent our own. Breaking the pattern that may have repeated throughout human existence. This perspective transforms Atlantis from myth to warning, from lost paradise to cautionary example. It suggests that our current civilization isn't humanity's first attempt at planetary-scale technology, but potentially our latest opportunity to achieve sustainable advancement. By the way, I find it fascinating how many ancient warnings about ecological balance exist across cultures. Do you think our ancestors understood something about sustainability that we're rediscovering only now? Your perspective might spark an interesting discussion in the comments. The search for Atlantis leads us toward a profound question. Are we the first global technological civilization Earth has hosted, or might we be the latest in a series of attempts to achieve sustainable complexity? And if previous attempts failed, what might we learn from their experience? Evidence of repeated climate-driven civilizational collapses appears throughout recorded history. The Old Kingdom of Egypt collapsed during prolonged drought around 2200 BCE. Mesopotamian societies fell to similar climate stress. The Maya declined during extended dry periods. Recent ice core and geological research reveals that these historical climate shifts were minor compared to the massive changes at the end of the last ice age. If relatively small climate fluctuations collapsed complex societies in recorded history, what would massive climate shifts do to earlier civilizations? The pattern becomes clear. Civilizations expand during periods of climate stability and favorable conditions, then collapse when those conditions change faster than social structures can adapt. This cycle has repeated throughout human existence, with each collapse resetting technological development. Genetic evidence supports this model of repeated population crashes coinciding with climate instability. Human genetic diversity shows unexplained bottlenecks, periods when population size decreased dramatically, reducing genetic variation. These align with known climate catastrophes. Perhaps most compelling is the emerging evidence for a population collapse approximately 12,900 years ago, precisely when Plato dates the destruction of Atlantis. This genetic bottleneck coincides with the Younger Dryas cooling event and possible cosmic impact scenario. If maritime civilizations existed on now submerged continental shelves, their populations would be most vulnerable to sea level rise. Their disappearance would create exactly the genetic signature we observe: population decline, followed by expansion of surviving inland groups. The implications become more urgent when we consider modern climate change. Current models predict sea level rise that would inundate coastal regions worldwide. Temperature increases that would make vast areas uninhabitable. Agricultural disruption threatening global food security. We face potential collapse triggers disturbingly similar to those that may have ended Atlantis and similar maritime civilizations. But we possess something they may have lacked: awareness of the collapse pattern itself and the technological means to potentially break the cycle. This represents the ultimate stake in our investigation, not merely confirming whether Atlantis existed, but understanding the cyclical pattern of rise and fall that has potentially reset human civilization repeatedly, learning from past collapse cycles to prevent our own. As we approach the most compelling evidence for Atlantis, consider this possibility. What if human history isn't the short, linear progression we've been taught, but a much longer, cyclical process of advancement and collapse? What if we stand at a familiar crossroads? What if Atlantis wasn't merely a place, but a stage of development? A level of technological sophistication and environmental impact that human societies have achieved repeatedly, only to collapse when planetary systems reach critical thresholds. The geological record confirms that Earth has experienced dramatic climate shifts throughout its history. The archaeological record increasingly suggests human societies have risen and fallen in response to these shifts. The mythological record preserves memories of these cycles. If Atlantis existed as Plato described, a maritime civilization destroyed by natural disaster after becoming corrupted by its own success, it would represent not an exceptional event, but a recurring pattern. A pattern we may be in the process of repeating. The stakes couldn't be higher. If we're approaching the same thresholds that ended previous advanced societies, we face a choice: continue patterns that lead to collapse, or learn from the past to create sustainable civilization. Break the cycle that may have reset human development repeatedly. This investigation isn't merely about a lost city beneath the waves. It's about understanding our place in the longer human story. It's about recognizing patterns that have potentially ended advanced societies before us. It's about choosing a different path forward. As we continue, we'll examine the most compelling evidence that Atlantis, or something remarkably similar, actually existed. We'll explore specific locations that match Plato's description. We'll consider the fate of its survivors and their potential influence on subsequent civilizations. Most importantly, we'll extract the core warning that Atlantis represents. Not merely a cautionary tale invented by Plato, but potentially the preserved memory of actual civilizational collapse. A warning from our ancestors about the fragility of complex societies when planetary systems change. Because if Atlantis did exist, its most important lesson isn't its achievement, but its ending. Not the marvel of its creation, but the tragedy of its loss. Not its glory, but its cautionary example of how quickly an advanced civilization can disappear when it exceeds environmental limits. Chapter 8. The three most compelling theories. As we approach the climax of our investigation into Atlantis, we must consider the most compelling theories about its existence and location. Not all interpretations of the evidence lead to the same conclusion. Three primary hypotheses have emerged, each supported by different lines of evidence. The first and most conservative theory suggests Atlantis never existed as a physical place. Plato invented it as a philosophical allegory about the ideal state and its corruption. The detailed description served literary purposes, making the fictional account more compelling through specificity. This interpretation dominated academic thought for centuries. Plato, after all, created other fictional settings for his philosophical dialogues. The lack of direct archaeological evidence for a civilization matching his exact description supports this view. But it struggles to explain certain anomalies. Why would Plato repeatedly insist Atlantis was not fiction, but historical fact? Why include specific details about geography, metallurgy, and agriculture that serve no obvious allegorical purpose? Why provide a precise timeline that places Atlantis in a geologically significant period? These questions lead to our second theory, that Atlantis was based on a real place, but Plato significantly embellished its characteristics. The core of the story preserved historical memory of an actual catastrophe, while details were exaggerated through centuries of retelling. The most compelling candidate for this real Atlantis is Minoan Crete and surrounding islands. This advanced Bronze Age civilization dominated the Mediterranean through maritime trade. It possessed many elements matching Plato's description: naval power, advanced architecture, bull worship. Around 1600 BCE, the Minoan civilization collapsed following the catastrophic Thera eruption on present-day Santorini. This volcanic explosion, among the largest in human history, triggered tsunamis that devastated coastal settlements throughout the eastern Mediterranean. The parallels are striking. An advanced island civilization destroyed by natural disaster, massive tsunamis, settlements vanishing beneath the waves, the collapse of maritime trade networks, cultural memory of a paradise lost to geological catastrophe. The Minoan theory offers a reasonable compromise between total fiction and literal interpretation. It acknowledges the historical basis while explaining the exaggerations. Plato's 9,000 years becomes 900 through translation error or deliberate enhancement. The location remains Mediterranean rather than Atlantic. But this theory also faces significant challenges. The Minoan civilization flourished thousands of years after Plato's stated timeline. It doesn't explain the consistent references to beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. It doesn't account for many specific details in Plato's account. These discrepancies lead to our third and most controversial theory, that Plato's account preserves memories of an actual advanced maritime civilization that existed approximately 11,600 years ago and was destroyed by catastrophic climate events at the end of the last ice age. This timeline aligns perfectly with the end of the Younger Dryas period, Earth's last major climate shift. It coincides with geological evidence for rapid sea level rise, potential cosmic impacts, and widespread environmental disruption. It matches when coastal plains worldwide were submerged beneath rising waters. Under this theory, Atlantis wasn't a single island but a network of maritime settlements on coastlines that are now underwater. As sea levels rose 400 feet following the last ice age, these coastal civilizations were incrementally destroyed, their remains now lying beneath hundreds of feet of water. The most compelling candidate region for this interpretation is the Azores Plateau in the mid-Atlantic. These islands represent the mountain peaks of a much larger landmass that was above water during the last ice age. Geological studies confirm much of this region was submerged by rising seas. Recent underwater surveys around the Azores have identified what some researchers interpret as artificial structures and organized patterns that wouldn't occur naturally. Stone anchors, possible harbor structures, and geometric arrangements that suggest human modification of the landscape. However, these findings remain preliminary and controversial. Without systematic underwater archaeological excavation, expensive and technologically challenging in deep water, definitive conclusions remain elusive. The evidence is suggestive but not conclusive. What makes this third theory particularly intriguing is how it aligns with recent scientific revelations about human capabilities in prehistory. Göbekli Tepe proves monumental architecture existed 11,600 years ago. Genetic studies confirm long-distance maritime travel before recorded history. Archaeological discoveries continue pushing back the dates for sophisticated human achievements. Metallurgy, astronomy, agriculture, and monumental construction all appear earlier than previously thought. The gap between primitive prehistory and advanced antiquity continues to narrow. This creates space for Atlantis not as supernatural or alien, but as an early human achievement. Maritime civilization developing earlier than conventional timelines allow, flourishing during a period of climate stability, then collapsing during rapid climate change at the Ice Age's end. Each of these theories has strengths and weaknesses. None perfectly explains all evidence. The first offers simplicity, but ignores anomalies. The second acknowledges historical basis, but dismisses timeline and location. The third embraces the full account but lacks definitive proof. The question becomes which theory best explains the totality of evidence, not just Plato's account, but the broader pattern of archaeological anomalies, geological events, genetic studies, and mythological parallels we've examined throughout our investigation. If you're wondering where I'm watching from, I'm in the ancient Mediterranean region tonight, contemplating these theories under the same stars that guided ancient mariners. Where are you joining from? Drop your location in the comments. It's fascinating to see how far this investigation reaches. The conservative interpretation, Atlantis as pure fiction, struggles to explain why similar fictional accounts of advanced civilizations destroyed by floods appear in cultures worldwide. It doesn't address the archaeological anomalies that suggest sophisticated human capabilities in deep prehistory. The Minoan interpretation, Atlantis as embellished recent history, fails to explain the consistent timeline placing Atlantis 9,000 years before Solon, Plato's source. It doesn't account for specific details that don't match Minoan civilization. It ignores the explicit Atlantic location, the prehistoric interpretation, Atlantis as memory of Ice Age maritime civilization, lacks definitive archaeological confirmation, but aligns with recent scientific discoveries about climate events, human capabilities, and submerged landscapes from the period Plato specified. As we weigh these competing theories, remember that history isn't fixed, but continuously revised as new evidence emerges. The discovery of Troy was once considered impossible, until Heinrich Schliemann used Homer's myths as a guide to uncover its actual remains. Similarly, the ancient city of Heraklion was considered legendary until its discovery beneath the Mediterranean in 2000. Göbekli Tepe remained buried for millennia, fundamentally changing our understanding of prehistoric human capabilities when finally excavated. History remains incomplete. The question isn't whether Atlantis existed exactly as Plato described, with literal bull temples and concentric harbors. The question is whether his account preserves the core truth of advanced maritime civilizations existing and collapsing during the period he specified. As we move forward, we'll examine the newest scientific evidence that has emerged in just the past decade. Revolutionary findings from genetics, geology, and underwater archaeology that are forcing reconsideration of conventional historical timelines, evidence that may finally resolve the Atlantis mystery. Thus, Chapter 9, The Revolution in Prehistoric Science. The past decade has witnessed revolutionary discoveries that have transformed our understanding of human prehistory. Advances in genetic analysis, underwater archaeology, and paleoclimatology have pushed back dates for human achievements and revealed sophisticated capabilities thousands of years earlier than previously thought. Perhaps most significant is the revolution in genetic archaeology. Ancient DNA analysis has revealed complex migration patterns and technological diffusion that conventional archaeology missed. It has identified population bottlenecks coinciding with climate catastrophes, exactly when Atlantis would have fallen. Genetic studies confirm humans were seafaring much earlier than previously recognized. DNA evidence shows populations reached isolated islands requiring open ocean navigation tens of thousands of years ago. Maritime capabilities weren't recent developments but fundamental human adaptations. Remote Pacific islands were settled by people who navigated thousands of miles of open ocean without instruments. The Americas were likely reached by both land and sea routes. Australia was colonized at least 65,000 years ago, requiring significant maritime technology and navigation knowledge. These findings demonstrate that prehistoric humans weren't primitive, but possessed sophisticated capabilities for their environmental challenges. They could navigate vast distances, transmit complex knowledge across generations, and adapt technologies to changing conditions. They were like us, innovative and resourceful. Equally revolutionary has been the application of LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology, to archaeology. This aerial mapping system penetrates forest canopies to reveal surface features invisible from ground level. It has transformed our understanding of ancient sites worldwide. LiDAR surveys in Central America revealed Maya settlements twice as extensive as previously known. In Cambodia, they discovered entire cities surrounding Angkor Wat. In the Amazon, they identified sophisticated earthworks and agricultural systems thought impossible for primitive societies. The implication is clear. We've consistently underestimated the scale and sophistication of ancient achievements. If recent civilizations were far more extensive than we realized until LiDAR revealed their full scope, how much more might we be missing from prehistoric societies. The most exciting application lies ahead: underwater LiDAR systems capable of mapping submerged landscapes on continental shelves. Initial surveys have already identified ancient river valleys, coastlines, and potential settlement sites, now hundreds of feet underwater. Atlantis's remains could be among them. Complementing these technological advances, paleoclimatology has revealed the dramatic environmental changes at the end of the last ice age in unprecedented detail. Ice cores, ocean sediments, and cave formations preserve records of past climate conditions with remarkable precision. These records confirm multiple catastrophic events between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, precisely when Plato places Atlantis. The Younger Dryas cooling event. Meltwater pulses raising sea levels dozens of feet within centuries. Potential cosmic impacts triggering global disruption. The most controversial finding involves platinum anomalies in geological strata from approximately 12,800 years ago. These anomalies, identified across 4 continents, contain materials that typically come from meteors. They suggest an extraterrestrial impact or airburst at precisely this time. If confirmed, this would provide the mechanism for Plato's single day and night of misfortune, a cosmic impact triggering earthquakes, tsunamis, and climate disruption that could destroy a maritime civilization in a geological instant. It would transform myth to documented catastrophe. Geological evidence also confirms that sea levels rose approximately 400 feet since the last glacial maximum. This wasn't gradual but occurred in dramatic pulses, including one major pulse precisely at the end of the Younger Dryas, 11,600 years ago. Exactly when Plato says Atlantis perished, these rising waters submerged vast coastal plains worldwide, up to 10% of Earth's total land area. If early human civilizations favored these coastal regions, as they have throughout recorded history, their remains would now lie beneath hundreds of feet of water. Underwater archaeology has already identified submerged settlements worldwide, dating to the end of the last ice age. Stone structures off Japan's Yonaguni Island, megalithic sites in the Mediterranean, possible harbor works near the Azores, ancient coastlines with signs of human modification. Most exciting is the recent application of satellite archaeology to underwater features. By analyzing seafloor topography and sediment patterns, researchers have identified anomalies on continental shelves that may represent submerged structures. Features with straight lines and right angles that rarely occur naturally. These features often appear at depths corresponding to coastlines as they existed 10,000, 12,000 years ago, when Atlantis would have flourished according to Plato. They cluster near underwater river mouths and natural harbors, precisely where maritime settlements would logically develop. The combination of these scientific advances creates a profound paradox. On one hand, we have Plato's account of an advanced civilization destroyed by natural disaster 11,600 years ago. On the other, we have scientific confirmation of catastrophic events at precisely that time. We have conventional history claiming humans were primitive hunter-gatherers 12,000 years ago, yet we have Göbekli Tepe demonstrating monumental architecture with sophisticated astronomical knowledge at exactly that time. We have evidence of maritime capabilities far earlier than previously recognized. We have the logical assumption that coastal regions now underwater would have been prime settlement areas during the last ice age. And we have emerging underwater surveys identifying anomalous features that may represent human structures from that period. This convergence of evidence doesn't prove Atlantis existed exactly as Plato described, but it creates space for its core reality: advanced maritime civilizations flourishing on now submerged coastlines, destroyed by catastrophic climate events at the end of the last ice age. The scientific revolution in prehistory forces us to acknowledge a humbling truth: we've consistently underestimated our ancestors. Time after time, new discoveries have pushed back dates for human achievements. Time after time, we've found our predecessors more capable than we imagined. From 20th century archaeology that doubled the age of civilization, to 21st century genetics that revealed complex prehistoric migrations, to ongoing discoveries that continue redrawing human timelines, the trend is clear. Human prehistory was far more dynamic and sophisticated than previously recognized. This creates an extraordinary possibility. What if the 12,000-year gap between anatomically modern humans appearing around 200,000 years ago and civilization emerging, supposedly around 6,000 years ago, isn't a period of stagnation? What if it contains multiple cycles of advancement and collapse? What if climate stability has been the key factor, determining whether human societies advance or regress? What if complex civilizations have emerged repeatedly during stable climate periods, only to collapse during rapid transitions? What if Atlantis represents one such collapse cycle? Recent climate research supports this possibility. Studies of past climate reveal that human advancement correlates strongly with climate stability. The rise of agriculture and cities followed the unusually stable climate of the Holocene, the past 11,600 years. Before that, during the Pleistocene, climate fluctuated dramatically. Warm periods followed by ice ages in cycles lasting thousands of years. Within this longer pattern were sudden shifts like the Younger Dryas, when global temperatures changed by several degrees within decades. Human societies struggling with such climate instability would face recurring challenges to agricultural systems and settled communities. Adaptations and knowledge developed during stable periods would be lost during chaotic transitions. Progress would be repeatedly reset. Yet within this challenging pattern, there were periods of relative stability, including the several thousand years before the Younger Dryas began. These windows of opportunity could have allowed maritime civilizations to develop along coastlines that are now underwater. This model, cyclical development constrained by climate instability, resolves many archaeological paradoxes. It explains technological sophistication appearing without clear precedents. It accounts for similar myths worldwide. It aligns with genetic evidence for population bottlenecks. Most importantly, it creates a framework where Atlantis becomes not an impossibility, but a probability, representative of maritime civilizations that would logically develop during stable climate periods, only to be destroyed when climate stability ended. The paradox of Atlantis transforms from how could an advanced civilization exist so early to how could advanced civilizations not have emerged during periods of climate stability. The burden of proof shifts from proving Atlantis existed to explaining why it wouldn't have. This doesn't mean uncritical acceptance of every detail in Plato's account. His description likely combines actual historical memory with embellishment and symbolism. But the core narrative, advanced maritime civilization destroyed by natural disaster, aligns with scientific evidence. As we approach our conclusion, consider what this means for our understanding of human potential. If our ancestors achieved maritime civilization 12,000 years ago, only to see it destroyed by climate catastrophe, what does this reveal about human capability and vulnerability? What lessons might this hold for our own civilization as we face accelerating climate change and environmental disruption? What warnings might Atlantis, not as myth, but as historical precedent, contain for societies pushing planetary boundaries beyond sustainable limits? Chapter 10. The Lost Maritime World. After examining the evidence across multiple scientific disciplines, we arrive at a conclusion both simpler and more profound than expected. Atlantis likely wasn't a single island civilization as Plato described, but something even more significant, a lost maritime world that flourished during the last ice age. This world didn't concentrate on one Atlantic island, but encompassed coastal civilizations worldwide, interconnected by seafaring networks, sharing technologies and knowledge, developing in parallel on coastlines that are now hundreds of feet underwater. A global phenomenon rather than an isolated culture. The evidence converges on a clear timeline. Between 20,000 and 12,800 years ago, as the last ice age gradually ended, humans occupied vast coastal plains now submerged. These areas offered ideal conditions for settlement, stable climate, abundant marine resources, and natural harbors. During this period of relative climate stability, maritime cultures would naturally develop more sophisticated technologies: boat building, navigation, trading networks, and eventually permanent settlements. The foundations of civilization emerging not on one island but on coastlines worldwide. Then came catastrophe. Approximately 12,800 years ago, Earth experienced a potential cosmic impact event. This triggered the Younger Dryas, a 1,200-year period of renewed cold and climate instability. It potentially caused earthquakes, tsunamis, and continental-scale wildfires. This catastrophe didn't end the maritime world immediately, but initiated its gradual collapse. Over the following 200 years, coastal civilizations struggled with climate instability, rising seas, and disrupted trade networks. Knowledge was lost. Technologies abandoned. Populations dispersed inland. The final blow came approximately 11,600 years ago, precisely when Plato dates the destruction of Atlantis. As the Younger Dryas abruptly ended, temperatures rose rapidly. Ice sheets melted at accelerated rates. Meltwater Pulse 1b sent sea levels rising dramatically. This wasn't a single day of destruction, but the culmination of a millennium-long collapse. The final phase when the last significant coastal settlements were overwhelmed by rising waters. When maritime civilization transitioned from struggling reality to preserved memory, the survivors of this maritime world wouldn't disappear, but migrate inland, carrying fragments of knowledge, technology, and cultural memory. They would appear as culture bearers to less developed inland groups. They would become the civilizing gods of worldwide mythology. This explains one of archaeology's greatest puzzles: the nearly simultaneous appearance of agriculture, monumental architecture, and complex social organization in multiple locations worldwide following the Younger Dryas. Not independent invention, but preserved knowledge from the maritime world. It explains why the world's earliest known temple complex, Göbekli Tepe, appears fully formed approximately 11,600 years ago, without clear precedents. It represents knowledge preserved from the maritime world, re-established by survivors after climate stabilized. It explains why similar flood myths appear in cultures worldwide, not as supernatural tales, but as preserved memories of actual catastrophic sea level rise and coastal inundation at the end of the last ice age. Cultural trauma encoded and transmitted through generations. It explains the global distribution of megalithic architecture, with similar techniques and astronomical alignments. Not parallel development, but diffused knowledge from common maritime sources. Cultural connections established before rising seas fragmented humanity. Most significantly, it explains why Plato's account contains accurate information about a time period 9,000 years before his own, details that align with modern scientific understanding of climate events, sea level rise, and catastrophes at the end of the last ice age. His story of Atlantis wasn't pure invention, but a preserving of cultural memory through Egyptian records and oral tradition. The core events, advanced maritime civilization destroyed by natural disaster, represent actual historical trauma from the end of the last ice age. This revelation transforms our understanding of human history. Civilization isn't 6,000 years old, but potentially tens of thousands of years old. Our ancestors weren't primitive, but achieved maritime capabilities and settled existence far earlier than conventional timelines allow. History isn't a linear progression from primitive to advanced, but a cyclical pattern of development and collapse driven primarily by climate stability. The relatively stable climate of the past 11,600 years, the Holocene, allowed our current civilization to develop without major resets. This pattern carries profound implications for our future. If previous maritime civilizations collapsed due to climate instability similar to what we face now, their experience contains warnings about exceeding planetary boundaries, about the fragility of complex societies during environmental change. The true significance of Atlantis isn't its existence as a perfect island paradise, but as representative of a maritime world that flourished and perished with changing climate conditions. a world whose collapse preserved lessons about human vulnerability to environmental change. As we accelerate climate change through greenhouse gas emissions and environmental degradation, we risk triggering instabilities similar to those that ended previous advanced societies. The difference is that we understand these processes and have technological means to potentially avoid their consequences. Atlantis transforms from myth to warning, not a supernatural tale of divine punishment, but the preserved memory of actual civilizational collapse triggered by climate catastrophe. A pattern we can either repeat or transcend, depending on our collective choices in coming decades. The search for physical remains of this maritime world continues. Underwater archaeology is in its infancy, with less than 1% of potentially submerged sites systematically explored. New technologies for deep-water archaeology promise discoveries that may confirm this reconstruction. But even without recovering submerged cities, the convergence of evidence across disciplines supports this conclusion. Geology confirms catastrophic climate events at precisely the time Plato specified. Archaeology demonstrates human capabilities much earlier than previously recognized. Genetic studies reveal population bottlenecks and coastal migrations, matching this timeline. Mythological patterns preserve consistent memories of maritime civilization and catastrophic flooding. Mathematical probability favors development of coastal civilizations during climate-stable periods. This isn't the end of the Atlantis investigation, but a new beginning. Each underwater survey, each genetic analysis, each climatological study adds detail to this emerging picture of a lost maritime world. A chapter of human achievement submerged, but not entirely erased. The revelation isn't that Plato's specific island existed exactly as described, but that his account preserves the core truth of something even more significant. Not a single lost city, but an entire era of human achievement, developed during climate stability, lost during climate change. This lost maritime world, the real Atlantis, wasn't supernatural or alien, but thoroughly human. It represents not the exception but the rule, human ingenuity flourishing during stable conditions, human society struggling during rapid environmental change, a pattern repeated throughout our existence. Understanding this pattern doesn't diminish our achievements, but enriches our heritage. We aren't the first to develop sophisticated maritime capabilities and settled existence. We're the inheritors of knowledge preserved through catastrophe, the beneficiaries of resilience that survived climate collapse. The search for Atlantis ultimately leads not outward to supernatural realms, but inward to human potential and vulnerability. To recognition of both our remarkable adaptability and our dependence on stable environmental conditions. To wisdom potentially preserved from previous cycles of achievement. Our journey through the evidence for Atlantis reveals a truth both humbling and inspiring. We stand not at the pinnacle of human achievement, but within a recurring cycle of development and challenge. We aren't the first to achieve technological sophistication or global connection. The maritime world that flourished at the end of the last ice age, the real historical basis for Atlantis, offers both caution and hope. Caution about exceeding environmental limits, hope in recognizing human resilience through catastrophe, wisdom potentially preserved across millennia. The disappearance of this world beneath rising seas doesn't represent supernatural punishment, but the natural consequences of planetary processes, some beyond human control, others potentially influenced by human activity. Climate stability remains the foundation for complex civilization. As we face our own climate challenges, the lesson of Atlantis isn't to fear inevitable destruction, but to recognize patterns that have ended advanced societies before. To understand that technological achievement doesn't guarantee sustainability. To learn from cycles of rise and fall. Perhaps the most profound revelation is that Atlantis exists not merely in the past, but potentially in our future. Not as a paradise to be recovered, but as a pattern to be transcended. Our civilization faces climate instabilities similar to those that ended the maritime world. The difference is knowledge. We understand these processes as our ancestors couldn't. We have technological capabilities to monitor environmental changes, predict consequences, and potentially avoid the worst outcomes. We can learn from the past rather than repeating it. The search for Atlantis ultimately leads to a single question. Will our civilization be a continuation of the cycle or its transcendence? Will we follow the pattern of development exceeding sustainability, or establish the first truly sustainable complex society in human existence? If you followed this journey and found it illuminating, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, where we'll continue exploring the forgotten chapters of human achievement and the cycles that have shaped our existence. Together we can learn from the past to create a more resilient future.